to the Sunlight Podcast. I'm excited to talk to you today about a couple deduction questions that I've been getting and some clarification on education expenses as a little follow-up to the education expenses episode I did 2 weeks ago. So first, I just want to have a little PSA for democracy. I was just, looking at the news and listening to podcasts and thinking like, my God, like it's pretty shocking how little I hear in the news about, what I consider to be one of the world's biggest news stories right now, which is the second largest economy in the world is imploding. China's economy is collapsing right now. They're having a tremendous real estate bubble. They're over leveraged to a degree that would not be legal in the US. That's far, far more extreme than, anything that happened in 2008 in the United States in that real estate bubble here. And their stock market has lost over 40% of its value. So this is just a real moment to me of gratitude for our democracy and for our regulation. I know we like to crap on our democracy and also on regulation. And I am here to say, I'm really excited that my stocks did not just go down 40%. I bet you are too. So I just want to say a little word of thanks to US regulators, to the very, very strong regulatory bodies that make sure that your investments in the United States are safe. I think it's a good thing. And speaking of democracy, right now is primary season. Obviously, there's a presidential election coming up, but I want you to remember that there's more than that. You have such a big influence on state and local elections, which need you desperately, and your voice is stronger at the state and local level. You may or may not be able to influence the presidential election. You certainly can if you live in Michigan, Arizona, maybe North Carolina, a couple of states, but there is a damn lot that you can do to support people running for your city council, superintendents, judges, school board. If you're paying attention to the news, you know that there are crazies trying to ban books and persecute children. I mean, I live in a state where they just passed a don't say gay law, and the school board is just going through the worst and most wrenching pain trying to figure out how to comply with the law, actually thinking about whether they need to be civilly disobedient and not comply with the law, which, is going to have down the road effects on our school system that would be probably incredibly negative. So I just, please don't stay at home because of feelings you have about the presidential election. Please, for the love of God and all the kids in your neighborhood and public school, please, God, go do your research on the school board. Even if you do not have children, could you please help get good people into those smaller offices that you might not pay attention to? The primary is where a lot of smaller races are decided. If you live in a district that is either largely red or largely blue, then coming out in the primary is actually the part of the race where the decision will be made. So I really strongly encourage you, if you have not voted yet, please vote. For those of you who are in North Carolina, where I am, I know many of you are all over the country. But if you're in North Carolina, early voting has already started. I already voted. If you want to see my slate of candidates, I am more than happy to share it with you. I would be happy to post on Instagram the ballot that I voted for. I definitely hope you will support Mo Green for superintendent if you are in the Asheville area. But I definitely, I just want you to be aware that early voting exists in North Carolina. It's already open. Voter ID laws have been passed, and so you do need to bring a government-issued ID to the polls with you. And also, if you're not registered to vote, and now I'm speaking only to North Carolina, please check your local state rules for voting rules where you are. But in North Carolina, you can register to vote during the early voting period. So if you show up at an early voting polling station and you're not registered to vote, you can register on the spot and then go vote. And I highly recommend that you do. You cannot do this on election day. So if you wait till Super Tuesday, March 5th, you will be out of luck. You will not be able to register to vote. So please, please come to the polling place, do your research, elect good people for superintendent, school board, city council, state offices. Gerrymandering happens at the state level. So who's running for your state house? This is a very, very important thing. I live in a state that is horribly gerrymandered, and I have been just doing my damnedest with the local Democratic Party to do what we can to counteract and fight against gerrymandering in our state and still get good people in. But I want to present to you a win that recently happened. In Wisconsin, gerrymandering was so outrageous and terrible. Wisconsin, like North Carolina, is a very evenly split purple state, half blue, half red. And Republicans had gerrymandered the state of Wisconsin so badly that it was able to pass, get a super majority of Republicans to pass, legislation that I don't personally believe in, that didn't feel very democratic to the voters of Wisconsin. And through a lot of local activism, people like me working on the ground level, knocking on doors, being a turf captain, doing poll greeting, they managed to get a Democratic governor and enough legislators to break the supermajority. And now the Democratic governor of Wisconsin broke the gerrymander and was able to draw districts that are fair. And he did not bias it towards Democrats. He split Wisconsin as it rightfully should be. Those maps are now 50-50 and they reflect the population of Wisconsin. So there's some winning that's happening in democracy. It really bothers me when people only read the New York Times, which of course does not report on your local news, and think they can't do anything. Real action happens at the state and local level. So please, I beg of you, stop banned books, research your local school board candidates. Please get involved. Please go vote. So look up your primary hours, primary dates in your area. If there's early voting, as there is in North Carolina, it may be open already, as it is here, and go rock that vote. All right, thank you for that little PSA. I think it's important. I think it's really important to say, because honestly, I don't think people connect taxes and tax paying enough with democracy. But taxes are a fundamental part of democracy. And the other side of taxes is being represented. You pay tax in order to be represented, to have your voice heard. And there are people perfectly happy to take your voice away. And you got to defend it. If you don't exercise your democratic rights, your rights to organize, your rights to knock on doors and gather in your precinct as a party, gather at Planned Parenthood, the NAACP, the Sierra Club, you have a right to do that. And if you don't exercise that, those rights can go away. So please, I implore you, you might hate the Democrats right now. I hope you don't. But if you do, join the action that Planned Parenthood is doing, the NAACP, the Sierra Club. Pick a group that you adore and get involved. All right. You might not be able to change the votes of certain people in your family who vote in ways that you don't agree with or support, but you know what you can do? You can get many times more people than that to get out and vote and counteract those votes that you don't agree with. So organizing, my friends, it's where the power is. All right, that's enough on that. Today on the podcast, I want to talk to you a little clarification on education expenses, and then I want to talk to you about fees and how it works when you cover expenses and are reimbursed and incur fees that might get reported to you as gross income that you have to report on your taxes. Okay? So first, for education expenses. So what's deductible? I did a podcast recently on education expenses, things like books, periodicals that you use for research or to stay current in your field. I used the example of a musician writing off concert tickets when they're going to see shows for research or education purposes for a specific project. Massage therapists getting a massage to test out a competitor, an affiliate, a referral, a new modality, an office setup. Those are all wonderful uses of the education expense deduction. But a little clarification for you. Undergraduate and graduate school education expenses are not deductible. So that is total retraining or total training to enter a field such as undergraduate and graduate education. That is not an education expense. You cannot deduct that on a Schedule C. What you can deduct on a Schedule C is education expenses that are required to keep or retain your license or to improve your skills. So for example, as an enrolled agent, I am licensed by the IRS, and I am required to take a fair number of continuing education credits every year. And so those education credits, I'm often paying money for those continuing education credits, and those expenses are deductible. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay, now let's talk about fees. Some overlooked fees, some fees that a lot of people miss a lot of the time, are credit card fees and payment processing fees. Now, I don't know about you, but I look at that line item every year and I'm like, my God, what must it be like to be a credit card company and be able to take 3% of the profit of the revenue of every business in the United States? I mean, it's a shocking amount of money, isn't it? So yes, of course, I do accept credit cards in Sunlight Tax, and credit card fees are a huge factor in my expenses. Now, a lot of times the revenue you generate is reported to you as though it all came into your pocket. But the credit card company or Stripe or Square or PayPal or Etsy is taking a cut. So don't forget to look through your documents and calculate what that amount of fees are that you're paying, because those are absolutely a deductible expense for you. And there's a specific line on your Schedule C for fees. So it's called commissions and fees, and that's where they go. All right. Now, a couple other things for that line, commissions and fees on your Schedule C, which, as you know, if you've been listening, is where you put deductions for your business, for your Schedule C, your self-employment. Let's talk about gallery commissions. So a lot of times I get questions from artists who, if you're a gallery artist like I am, a pretty standard gallery split with an artist is 50-50. So I have a show at my gallery, the Tracy Morgan Gallery here in Asheville. And when Tracy makes a sale of a painting or a couple of paintings, she collects the money from the sale from the collector, and then she pays me out my commission, which is 50% of the sale, the revenue from the sale. Now, here's the thing. Here's how I report that on my taxes. I never collected the full amount of the payment from the collector, right? That's part of the work of the gallery, is to collect, to invoice and to follow up and to collect that payment. So I only receive the part that is actually taxable to me. I only receive the 50% payout, and I report that as income on my tax return. I never paid Tracy, right? She pays me, right? Because that's a pretty typical way for it to work. The gallery is the one interfacing with the collector and collecting the money, and then they pay out the artist. So whatever money comes into your bank account is essentially what you're going to report on your taxes. In my case, in this scenario, that amount is going to be just my cut, right? Now, if it happened that I made a sale went through me, and so I became the collector of the money. I've had a scenario like this before where I have made a sale through an open studios event and then sent the 50% commission to my gallery. I have done that before. In that scenario, it's pretty rare for me, but if it does happen, then I will report and must report the full revenue that I got from the collector. So that's 100% of the sale price. And then whatever I pay to my gallerist, then I deduct that and I enter it on the line item commissions and fees, right? So whatever the payment amount I paid out to the gallery, I would list there. Does that make sense? Now, this can exist in many other fields. Let's say, for example, you're a musician I was just talking with this amazing, amazing musician who is part of a 25-piece brass band, like New Orleans style jazz band. And she's the money person, right, for the band. And so I'm going to kind of disguise details here, but let's just say that she is the, this happens a lot in bands where there's someone who's kind of the money manager, right? So a lot of times what will happen is the club or the venue will pay that person. That person is sort of the point person for the money, and that person will receive the income, but then that person will pay out the musicians, right, out of their bank account. Now, in the informal way that many artists operate their businesses, including musicians with bands, you probably have never set up a formal partnership arrangement. What you have is one person who collects all the money and pays everybody out their cut. Hopefully, that person is also paying for expenses like gas and insurance and whatever other, music repairs, whatever other expenses there are. But the way that the IRS is going to see the income and the expenses is basically the metric I want you to use in your mind is think about where it hits the bank account. So whose social security number is attached to that bank account? That's the person responsible for the taxes. Okay. And believe me, somebody's social security number is attached to that bank account. It's not a mystery. So if I'm the point person for a large touring band, right, and I take in the money from the clubs and the venues and I pay out the musicians, I will report as income on my tax return because it's my bank account with my social security number. I will have to report the income received from those clubs and venues. Now, when I pay out the musicians, I also get to report the expenses, and that makes sense. It's logical. So whatever I pay out to the musicians is just a reportable expense. I would probably list it as a contractor expense. It's also important to know that in that scenario, if I pay any of those musicians more than $600, I'm going to have to issue them a 1099 as well to report that income. Now, regardless of how much I pay them out, above or below $600, that musician is still responsible for reporting that income. The law does not change. Your reportable income is your reportable income, whether or not you receive a 1099 for it. But the whole purpose of 1099s is to lock down and clarify that you absolutely, without a doubt, need to report this income. Because in exactly our world, in the world where a lot of us are running informal businesses for the love, and maybe the business structure stuff is a kind of an afterthought, the IRS wants to make very clear and very sure that anybody receiving income in those situations, that it doesn't get lost and doesn't get unreported. Okay. All right. So I hope that helps you understand the nature of being the point person or the money person and collecting a fee that's larger than what you might pay out. Collecting a fee and then paying out from that fee, even when the money is not really rightfully yours. Okay. All right. So I hope this episode has been helpful for you. As always, if you have questions about your deductions, things that you are feeling this tax season that you would like me to talk about on the podcast, I keep a spreadsheet of all your suggestions. So you can send me a DM on Instagram at Sunlight Tax. I am all ears listening to what you would like me to do a future episode on. Go out and get all those deductions. If you have not downloaded my deductions guide to help you with this year's taxes and set up your bookkeeping for next year's taxes, you can always get that at sunlighttax.com/deductions guide. There are 6 different guides. You can pick the one that fits you best. And when I do the update for 2024 taxes, don't worry, that's not coming for a whole year, but I am already working on those updates. There will be even more than 6. So I hope you get that deductions guide, sunlighttax.com/deductions guide, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm so grateful for that. This video is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links I reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.